Hello everyone. I thought I'd go ahead and create a small video talking about the rules that in the end create alarms themselves. I know it could be a little bit daunting sometimes to get into the rules themselves, make modifications to it, and so on. So I thought I'd go ahead and review some of this maybe to make it a little bit easier for yourself going through the process. I'm looking at my demo lab. As you can see right here, I don't have a lot going on. I'm going to go ahead into the administration, then the rules, and then go right into the rule management itself. You can see here that I've gone ahead and sort of pulled up only the ones that have to deal with the vBundle itself. This one, in this case, is looking at the data store capacity of an actual ESX host. It could be anywhere in your environment that you have. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And when I go in to take a look at the actual rule itself, you can see that it is a multi rule that we have going on. Go ahead into the rule editor itself. And what you have, I'm going to switch over here to the rule definition, starting with the first tab, is that we can have our name, we have our rule description and the alarm description. These are just comments over here on the right hand side. They have nothing to do with what's actually put into the message itself. This is our way of simply taking a look at this, letting us know how it's going to be used, and so on. As you can see, this is a multi-severity rule, which allows us to have critical, warning, and so on from here. The next one is how we're going to trigger this. And this brings up a pretty good point for a lot of people when they're doing the environment. Straight out of the box, most of these are set to data-driven, which is every time that we actually use the VMware agent and we go out to the environment, we will then go through all of the data that actually comes back. In this case, we're talking about data stores. And then we'll run this rule. The one thing that a lot of people end up sort of talking to me about is the fact that I get a lot of emails. They just keep coming over and over again. And we have several different ways here and in the behaviors, which I'll get to in a second. But let me stick with the descriptions. So in a time-driven rule itself, we would have to where we can have an evaluation. I'll get to data-driven in a second. So time would really go every, 3 or 4 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes. I would want you to run this rule, go out into the environment, and search for whatever my criteria is. This is a good way if you're actually running through. Maybe you have it to where, every half hour we go out and we take a look at all the data stores. Most data stores aren't going to fill up in 2 or 3 minutes. They're going to fill up over time. Maybe by every hour you go out and check, maybe go out every 3 or 4 hours that we would actually set it. And all you have to do is simply go in here. We have seconds, minutes, and hours themselves to put in there. If we take a look at data-driven, I want to explain something pretty clearly here. Is data-driven is going to be based, again, off of the agent itself. Now, typically, we have those set and when we're dealing with performance at 5-minute intervals. So every 5 minutes, we will go out into the environment and we will check to see if the data store is full. That, again, is one of those things where you need to decide how you're actually going to do it. Because if I have a data store that's going to be filling up, it's going to constantly keep sending me emails that this thing's going to fill up. And it's up to you to decide. The next one, I'm really not going to get into it in this video, but this is event driven. This is really kind of based off of something else that fires in the environment or an event that has triggered another event and so on from there. We simply don't have enough time to review that in this video. Schedule driven itself, this is where you can set it up that maybe every 6 hours I want to go through. Now I know that sounds like time driven. But think of it another way. If I have a schedule driven and I say every Monday I want you to evaluate all of my data stores, or once a month I want you to go through and run maybe a particular one. Maybe we're looking at trending. Over the last week it has had some kind of latency. Send me an alarm. So schedule driven is really kind of think of a point in time that you want to do it and go from there. The next one is our topology itself. Now, I'm not going to change around any of this rule. That's not the purpose of the video itself. But let's say, for instance, we wanted to look at maybe an agent. We want to look at all the VMware agents themselves, the collectors, or a cluster, or we want to look at a data center, or VMware network. Maybe we're getting high throughput on a NIC or something like that. Anything you want. You can really kind of go in and take a look and run these through it. And see what's going on. You can see again we're sticking with the data store. The properties over here, I'll have to tell you, I haven't seen many people do it, but we can actually drill directly into looking at a specific property of that data store itself. And what that does is really just limits you down in your rule to really target those specific items themselves. I want to bring up an interesting thing here. I've had a lot of people ask me, hey, I don't want you to run rules on certain things like internal data stores. So those are disks directly mounted to the ESX host itself. And how do I do that? How do I get these things to where they don't show me that data? And it's actually pretty easy to filter that out. If you will, I'm just going to go ahead and click on this checkbox, which is going to evaluate my environment. And as you can see from here, I have basically 3 data stores that are mounted to my ESX host. And maybe it is that I want to run this rule, but I want to not run up against these 2 data stores here. Well, we can just write in some pretty easy English. We can simply put, I'm just going to paste this in here for time's sake. We can go in here and say, you know what, I want to look at all the data stores out here, but not the ones that say data store in the name. And from there, I can just click this run again. And as you can see, we're going to be limiting the objects down to just this Western Digital green that we have going on. You can see this is the actual object itself. I know you might be wondering why is it that the data store comes through. This is actually an object ID that's going on in here. So this is the actual one, though, that we're going to run this rule up against. We're going to ignore all the rest of the data stores going on. I could certainly change this instead of not to simply like. And when I run this, we will only get the data stores that have the name data store in them, as you can see right here. Now this would work for virtual machines. This would work for certain clusters. It's always best in your environment to have some sort of naming convention that you stick with because it makes things a lot easier. We can obviously put the wildcard at the beginning as well or at the end. This is just, again, a great way to take a look at this alarm. The next thing I go to is my actual criteria itself. And this will be how do I figure out what is fatal? As you can see right here, this is the message itself that's going on. I want to point out a couple things. If you look right here, we have this @ symbol, which is going on at the beginning. That signifies that this is a variable that we have declared within the rule. And you can see that it's a little chopped off on the side here, but I do want to point that out, and we'll get to that in a minute. As we can see from here, if we start reading through this, we can sort of understand what it's actually going for. One thing that, again, we should look at is this thing called a global registry variable. And what this is really these variables that are set up that can be used anywhere inside of our rules. Remember, the ones that have the @ symbol can only be used inside of this rule and can't be used anywhere else, whereas these can be used in any rule that's out there. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and show you. I usually like to have 2 browsers set up so I can take a look and see what that criteria is. And as you can see, I went to New Window. I'm going to go ahead and pop this back so we have more screen space. Go back into Administration, go into Rules, and then as you can see, Manage Registry Variables. Now if we look back at this one we had one called vBundled Data Store Ignore List. If we go a little bit further down, I want to take a look at one here where we're comparing the size of the actual data store to this registry variable, which is called vBundled Data Store Fatal. And if we go and find that one, you'll actually see in here, it's almost all the way down, a little bit further. Here it is. So we have these different criterias going on here. We've got our ignore list, which is empty. And then we have the actual free critical, warning, fatal, and so on. And these are set with sections that we have put up here. And if we go back and we take a look at this, we imagine, if you will, we actually put that number in here. Now it makes it kind of nice because think of it as an SLA. You set up that anything that has to do with 10% or 10 gigabytes, you wouldn't have to go back into this rule. Maybe you copied this rule into several different clusters and they all have to deal with the same variable itself. You could simply change that registry edit on here and it'll affect all of the rules at one time. And the next section here, we actually have the server level, severity level variables itself. Now these are variables that can only be used in the fatal alarm itself. Most of the time you won't find many of those, but this is where you could declare it. Where would I use something like this? Well, if you have a different group that you may be sending an email to, or an SNMP trap, you may signify different levels. So if I have fatal, I may send it to one group. If it's critical, it may go to a different one, and so on from there. And then we have our actual actions. So from here you could see we're actually going to do an email action that we're going to set up. And here I'm going to go ahead and click on this and go to it. You can actually see from here in the action tab, we're going to see the actual things as part of that message itself. We can see the subject, which I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Pull this over into the main view. Get rid of the right side. And from here you can see doesn't look like it's something we know and see, but actually if we go into user defined, this is the actual message that would appear in the email. Remember we said in this case here this was the subject. If I'd clicked on the message itself, we'd see it, but you could customize this for this rule. This may be something that you fill out that has to do with, you can see we say fatal. And then here in a few minutes we're going to talk about the actual rule variables that pop up from here. But this is how you would actually change that message. Again, this is only going to be for fatal. This is not going to be for each one of these actions going on. Let me go ahead over to these schedules real quick. And this is where we could set up blackouts, right? So we could say, you know, hey, I don't want it to show up during a certain time. I do want it to show up between these certain times, business hours or so on. So maybe during the day, you say during business hours, which you would declare within vFoglight itself, I only want you to run these rules. After hours, don't worry about it, right? There may not be an engineer that's there. Not highly used, but you never know. This one here with the blackout schedules, think about it this way. If you have virus protection that's running all the time and it's running high latency or high CPU or something like that, you could set this up that would coincide with your actual virus protection going on to keep you from getting strayed email messages or anything in your environment. We would just really suppress it or black it out during that time. Here's where we get into the behavior. So if you've ever gotten just overwhelmed with emails or anything like that, doing a couple tweaks here will really help you out. So on this section here, if we take a look at this and we say fire action if so many consecutive evaluations are true. Remember, right now we're dealing with every single time that the agent goes out and collects the data. So in this case, we may think of this now as saying, you know what, I want you to wait, make sure we don't have a false positive, and maybe we want to wait until 3 times that it's a certain level, then go ahead and send us an email or send us an alert inside of actual vFoglight itself. Now, one thing to keep in mind is it will not first send you an email. It'll wait for 3 times before it first sends you an email. Again, this is very good for things like CPU spikes or ready time that doesn't normally take hold and go on and so on from there. The next one is the fire actions if so many times are true. Now, if we take a look at this, this may be, again, sort of the highs and the lows that go on. It goes up for a very short amount of time and then comes back. Sometimes people find that ready time, they get a lot of emails or something like that going on with the ready time where it spikes up and then it comes back down, it goes up and comes back down, and so on. And they could get 3, 4, 5 emails, but they don't constantly occur. Well, in this case here, we could kind of level that out. Think about cutting the 95th percentile out. And maybe you want to set it to 3 out of 5 times. If it's true, then we want to go ahead and send out an email. Beware though, you don't want to set yourself up with too high of a number for some of your specific alarms, because maybe you may never get them and you'll miss it and something actually happens in your environment. I always recommend that you start out maybe 2 out of 4 or 1 out of 2 or something like that, and just start to raise that level up as you're going along. The next one is the wait. So it all takes us a certain amount of time to log in, get into Virtual Center, and make changes in your environment. And from this, we can have it will send us an alarm, and then it will wait. In this case, let's say, usually it takes me 15 minutes to get in, get the system, go look and see what's going on, check in vFoglight, make sure we know that we can solve the problem. And then after 15 minutes, then go ahead and send me another alarm. Then wait 15 minutes and then send me another one. And this is really good kind of to give yourself a little padding in there. Now remember a little bit of difference between it. At the top we said we would wait for 3 times before I send an email. Down here at the bottom we're going to send an email and then we're going to wait. So you're at least going to get notified at least 1 time, and then we wait 15 minutes or whichever interval you set it. Over here in the rule variables, this is where we saw that @ symbol signifying that these were actually variables inside of this rule itself. As you can see from here, we can actually set this up. This is a variable which is the capacity available for that data store itself. If we click on this, we can go in and we can see that it's actually pulling this back in our environment. If we click on this data store name, we're going out and actually finding the name of the data store itself, and here we're actually going out and finding the actual disk space. We're dividing by 1024 in order to find how much space is left. From here we've got this ignore list that was going on. You may decide to use that one little trick I showed you where it was where not name equal to that we showed. If I go across, there's no more tabs to take a look at. I'll go back in here to rule definition and go take a look at this one last time. Again, if I put this variable in here, this is probably something really good for you to have ahead of time. I do want to point out one thing, which a lot of people don't seem to take into account, and more of a disclaimer, if you will. Whenever you're going in and you're going to take an existing rule and you're going to make a change to it, it's always going to be best practice to copy this rule, going in here and copying it, making sure these are all disabled if these are going to be your templates that you set up, and then name it something, maybe your first initials, maybe it's the initials of the company itself, and put those into the system. And the reason why is really this. Every time we come out with an update or a cartridge gets updated and you load it into the system, it's going to take its rules that it has and it's going to overwrite them with new data. Maybe it's just refreshing code or something like that. And if you've changed these, they'll revert back to the new one or the way they were. Anytime you actually copy them and put your own name on it, we never ever go and overwrite those. So keep that in mind as a best practice. The other thing that comes out very nice is when you're actually going into the environment, you could always search for it with those initials and you'll only see the alarms itself. So I hope this has helped you quite a bit with these rules and maybe taking a little bit of the sting out of going in and creating your own rules. And I'd love to see what some people have put together from this video into their environment. I thank you very much.